Defending Utah covers the stories others are just too often afraid to touch.
They don't nibble around the edges when it comes to pointing out threats to our liberty. They're not afraid to name names and call out organizations.
This is Defending Utah Radio, every Friday morning at 9 on K-Talk 1640. Defending Utah. Think right and wrong, not right and left. Join Defending Utah, because if you're not already on a government watch list, you should be.
So, we these are some pretty heavy topics. So I want to get into some of the solutions that we can work on. And we need to be able to identify solutions. We need to really have a solid understanding of what the problem is. Can you imagine going to a doctor and you say, hey, doctor, I've got a headache. And all of a sudden he says, you have a tumor. We're going to start chemotherapy tomorrow and radiation treatment. He didn't ask you any questions, didn't do any tests. How can he really diagnose you with that, right? And so too often, we see the things that are going on, and they're couched in the frame of whatever the media wants to couch this in. We've got this, the last caller brought up the inland port. And if we see, if we are diagnosing the problem based on how the media frames it between the communists and business interests, we're not going to be able to actually diagnose the problem. We have to have a proper diagnosis before we can come up with a good cure. And most of the issues that we're facing in government, there are two major things going on here that is not being addressed. The first one we talk about here on our program a lot is the fact that we are facing a conspiracy. People purposely working behind the scenes to deceive people to implement an anti-liberty agenda. Which leads us to the second part of the scenario, is that the Constitution is the key. If we understand and enforce the Constitution, those principles that are found in there, and of protecting the freedom and liberty of the rights of man, right? Your life, liberty, and property. It was key not just to, there's three different philosophies regarding property. You have the first one being like communism, where the state is very honest. They say that we own the property, we control the property, you're going to do with it what we say. Then you have the dishonest type of government, more like fascism, where they say, oh, you've got the title, you own that property, you've got property rights, but we're going to tell you what to do with your property. We're going to tell you how to paint your business. We're going to tell you who to hire. We're going to tell you who to fire. We're going to tell you where you can have your type of business. And so you don't really have any actual control over the property that you own. And then you have, in a free society, you have the right to own your property, and you have the right to control your property, as long as you're not, right, destroying the life, liberty, and property of somebody else. And so that's what the Constitution was designed to protect. But there are some critics of the Constitution that have a few remarks. President George W. Bush, when people were being critical about the Patriot Act and his attack on due process, he said, quote, "Stop throwing the Constitution in my face. It's just a GD piece of paper." And so he felt, he's like, oh, yeah, it's okay. He didn't have any respect for the protections that the Constitution was supposed to give you. He's talking just a piece of paper, according to George W. Bush. And then you have a libertarian thinker, his name is Lysander Spooner. He says, quote, "But whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it's unfit to exist." And so this libertarian thinker is saying that, the Constitution either gave us the horrible things that we have, or it had no power to stop it. And so I want to replace some of those, the word Constitution with the word Ten Commandments, and see if it makes sense to you there. He says, "But whether the Ten Commandments really be one thing or another, this much is certain. It has either authorized such a society as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist." Now, both of those things are just words. The Constitution, the Ten Commandments, they're when you break it down, they're just words. But they are natural law, and they are things that they can't enforce themselves. We would never say that the Ten Commandments are unfit, that they cause the society that we live in. It's the fact that we've refused to live by them that has caused the society, is us. And the same thing in government with the Constitution. The Constitution has not caused this. James Madison himself says that we can't depend on the government to protect our rights. It is up to us to be able to do that. And we're going to get into this more when we get back from the break right here on K-Talk AM 1640.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio right here on K-Talk AM 1640, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. We're so glad you've joined us this morning. If you want to be a part of the program, give us a call at 801-254-1640. It's 801-254-1640. We want to make sure that you are also subscribing to our podcast. And if you've missed a part of the program, you missed an earlier portion of the program, make sure you go to Spreaker.com or you download Spreaker onto your phone or iTunes, and you look up Defending Utah. So if you've got an Android, you look up on Spreaker. If you've got an iPhone, you go to iTunes, you look up Defending Utah, you hit the subscribe button, and that way whenever we get a new episode up, you can listen to that and make sure that you kind of go back, take notes, and share it with your friends. Make sure and get your friends to start subscribing and follow us on Facebook. We encourage you to also go to defendingutah.org and support our sponsors there, as well as go and click on the store tab and pick up our new book, The Proper Role of Government, a 21st Manifesto for Good Government. And what this book does is it reprints, the first half is just a reprint of Ezra Taft Benson's book, The Proper Role of Government. And then the second half of it is we go through all 15 principles of Ezra Taft Benson's Proper Role of Government, and we go Principle 1. Okay, this is what Principle 1 is. What's the foundation of that? What did the Founding Fathers say about that? How have we seen that implemented in the past? What's the natural law principle of it? And then how do we implement it today? That's the essential thing, is how do we take action to be able to restore liberty and be able to keep government in check? And so go pick up at defendingutah.org, The Proper Role of Government, a 21st Century Manifesto for Good Government. And speaking of which, when we went to the break, we were talking about critics of the Constitution, because these are, really when it gets down to it, is the problems that we're seeing is an organized, secret attempt to destroy the principles of the Constitution, and the morality tied to it, so that they can implement tyranny. But there are people out there that think, that the Constitution is. I quoted Lysander Spooner before we went to the break. He says that the Constitution is really, it's either authorized the government that we have, or it's been powerless to prevent it. And I believe that if we were to apply the same logic to the Ten Commandments, that it's either caused the society that we're in today, or it failed to prevent it, is the same type of logic. And we would never undermine the Ten Commandments in such a way. It's these things, they can't enforce themselves. And that's exactly what James Madison said. He said, quote, "Is there no virtue among us? If there be not, we are in a wretched situation. No theoretical checks, no form of government can render us secure. To suppose that any form of government will secure liberty or happiness without any virtue in the people is a chimerical idea. It's a false idea." So again, he says that no form of government, this guy's considered, he's called the father of the Constitution. Whether you agree with that or not is irrelevant. That's what this guy's a founding father. He says that no form of government, even the one that they gave us, the Constitution, no form of government can render us secure. And to suppose that any form of government, it's to suppose that any form of government will render us, will secure liberty without virtue in the people, it's impossible, he says. If there be sufficient virtue and intelligence in the community, it will be exercised in the selection of these men. If we want liberty, we have to be ourselves virtuous, and we have to be intelligent. We have to do the work of studying. Once we, in addition to our efforts to have virtue, we have to do the study to rout out the conspiracy. John Jay, one of the original Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he was the head of a committee to rout out and expose conspiracies. We have to be informed of what's going on in addition to our virtue to be able to secure liberty. Thomas Jefferson, he said that to educate and inform the whole mass of the people, they are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. They didn't say that the Constitution was going to preserve our liberty. He said we were going to be the ones that secured our liberty. And Alexis de Tocqueville, studying and looking at America and our founding fathers in that era, why were we so different? We were immigrants from Europe, right? Why were we able to do something so different and so special that wasn't done there? And so in his book, Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville says, quote, "Every citizen is taught the doctrines and the evidences of his religion, the history of his country, and the leading features of its constitution. It is extremely rare to find a man perfectly acquainted with all these things. Imperfectly acquainted, I'm sorry. It is extremely rare to find a man imperfectly acquainted with all these things. And the person wholly ignorant of them is a sort of phenomenon." So he said that it was hard to find somebody that didn't understand his religion and the history of his country and the Constitution. Everybody knew those things. And to find somebody that didn't know about the Constitution and the history of his country, they were the freaks. They were the weirdos. Now, we look at our society today. Is that the situation that we're in? We're in the complete opposite situation that Alexis de Tocqueville saw us at that point in time. In fact, Britney Spears in an interview said, quote, "I think we should just trust our president in every decision he makes and should just support that, and be faithful in what happens." So that's the more common attitude of our culture today. And so we are a completely different society. The founding fathers, looking at our culture and today, would say, yeah, we're pretty much right now as we stand, trying to pass new laws as we do to try and, get the right guy elected. We're in the exact opposite situation. We've got to stop putting the cart before the horse. And that's why we work so hard at defending Utah, at really doing things that will lay a solid foundation. It's not as sexy. It's not as, it's not as exciting as we get to, rally around some hero to get elected to office, because we realize, we look at the principles of what's really going to work. That's not going to work. And so we are focusing on the things that will actually work in the long term to restore liberty, and looking at what the founding fathers had and what they did to be able to do what they did that was so special. we've got to get rid of this attitude that's so prevalent that is, exemplified in what Britney Spears said in trusting our president and every decision he makes. The Founding Fathers says to bind these people down by the Constitution, not to trust these people. And so we've got to do this. And this really brings me to when I started to really wake up to what was going on. And I hate to say that, whenever I hear somebody say that they're awake, I'm like, okay, you said you're awake. That means you're not awake. Because the more awake you are, the more realize that you need to continually be waking up to things that are going on. But when I first started to wake up, you've got the sleepy eye going on, and I really started to get frustrated. I was like, what do you do about it? And I came across this great quote that really exemplifies what we need to really take in. It says that education without action leads to frustration. Now, how true is that? You're just learning about these things, and that's it. It's just going to drive you crazy. I always say, I don't want to be the most informed person in the concentration camp, right? So education without action leads to frustration. But on the other end, action without education leads to fanaticism. Like we've seen in the news recently about these thugs protesting the inland port, or the WTO riots back in 2000, 2001. Those people are just they're not educated on these things. They're just going out there, they're hearing one little thing, and they're just going nuts. And so it's to be able to actually be able to restore liberty, we've got to mix the two together, mix education with action together to be effective. And so going back to what we have to be educated, we have to understand. We have to be wise in these things. So we have to understand the Constitution to be able to actually be able to go back to it. You can't go back to something that you don't understand. And, when in 2010, the Tea Party movement was pretty big in the country, and people were yelling at Senator Bob Bennett here, you need to follow the Constitution. And his response would be, well, which interpretation of the Constitution? Who's your interpretation, my interpretation of the Constitution? Because words have different meanings to different people. So, words don't have meanings. It means whatever you want. And I've given presentations on the Constitution, and that'll be an audience comment sometimes. It'll be like, whose interpretation? The Supreme Court's interpretation? But the Constitution actually tells you how to read it. And in contracts, they have what's sometimes referred to as a reader clause. It has other names to it as well. But it tells you how to read and interpret the document. And the Constitution's clause telling you how to read the document is the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. And it says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. Okay, so this lays out exactly what the Constitution is. It is a limitation. It is a listing of defined, few and defined power. James Madison in the Federalist Papers and in Federalist 45, he says the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. That's Federalist 45. Few and defined. Just, 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated, those few and defined powers not delegated to the United States, are reserved to the states and the people. Federalist 14 says, by James Madison says, quote, "It is to be remembered that the general government is not to be charged with the whole power of making and administering laws. Its jurisdiction is limited to certain enumerated subjects." So it is the created, not the creator. We are the ones that were given inalienable rights. We have God-given rights, and we delegated authority to government. There are 17 specifically defined powers that were delegated to the government. The Constitution is not a law to the people. It is actually a law to the government. These are the things that you're allowed to do. And we said, if we didn't tell you you can do it, that means you're specifically, according to the 10th Amendment, which is the Constitution, we did not give you authority to do it, you are specifically prohibited from doing it. You are not allowed to do it. Everything outside of those 17 powers is completely illegal. And what the Founding Fathers called, in the Declaration of Independence, they called it pretend legislation. And they talked about how the American colonists were tried for, quote, pretended offenses because of these pretend legislation, right? If these laws, we talk about unconstitutional. The Founding Fathers talked about how the king was acting unconstitutionally as well because England had its own constitution that was being violated, and those laws that were in violation of the English Constitution were pretend legislation. And today, laws that are in violation of the Constitution are pretend legislation, and if you're charged with those crimes, the Declaration of Independence says that you're being tried for pretended offenses. Not real offenses. You didn't really break a law. You broke a pretend law. So it's a pretend offense. You can't get in trouble for breaking a pretend offense. Okay, so who decides? When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about who decides what's constitutional. Do the courts decide what's constitutional? Does Congress decide? Does the president decide? Are we all just independent arbiters? Do we all just individually just go off and make up our own rules as it goes along, and we get to decide what's constitutional, and we get to, say, you can't tell me what to do? Or is that the false dichotomy? Are these the false options out there? So we're going to talk about that when we get back from the break. But again, I want to encourage all of our listeners to go to defendingutah.org and click on the membership tab. Become either a member or give a one-time contribution to help us continue to do the work that we do. Nobody else in the state of Utah has covered the topics that we cover and is getting down to the root of what's really going on. And so you can become a member and support our investigative journalism. You can become a member and become an activist to actually start to be a part, do the action part after the education. So you've learned all these things. Now what do we do about it? We do weekly trainings for activist members that you can be a part of, and also for our supporting members. We've got a great new package where if you sign up during the month of July, you'll get a free Defending Utah t-shirt, as well as a copy of all of our books that we have at the Defending Utah store. So I encourage you to become a member today, or go to the Defending Utah Freedom Store and pick up some of your booklets to become more informed about what's really going on. More when we get back from the break right here on K-Talk AM 1640.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, AndersonAccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, HigherCallingFirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, BlackLotusWebDev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801 254-0835 or visit gonewsmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio right here on July 12th, 2019. Right here on K-Talk AM 1640. If you want to be a part of the conversation, give us a call at 801-254-1640. But before we went to the break, we were talking about the enumerated powers of the Constitution. And that the Constitution itself says that anything that is not specifically given permission to the federal government to do, they're not allowed to do it. It's pretended legislation. And so who decides what is real legislation, what's pretend legislation, right? When the Founding Fathers wrote the Declaration of Independence and called what the king was doing pretend legislation, there were people there, the Tories, the people that were defending the crown that were, laughing. How can you call it pretend legislation? They passed it. It was passed by Parliament. The king supported it. And they would say the same thing today. How can it be pretend legislation? Congress, they were voted on. The king, the president signed it. How can it be pretend legislation? So who decides, what this is, what's constitutional and what's not? The Founding Fathers, thankfully, didn't leave us in the dark, right? And this goes back to, where does the power come from? Did the government create us and allow us to have the rights that we have, or did we create them and limit their power, limit their right? Because it all originated with us. James Madison, he said, quote, "There can be no tribunal above the states, the creator, than their authority, to decide in the last resort whether the compact, the Constitution, made by them be violated." Right? The states, it's not the Supreme Court that decides. It says that there can be no tribunal above the states. If a state legislature says that the Constitution, the compact, has been violated, then it's been violated. In the Kentucky resolutions of 1798 and 1799, Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "If those who administer the general government be permitted to transgress the limits fixed by that compact," meaning if they're allowed to violate the specific limits in the Constitution by a total disregard to the special delegations of power therein constrained, in annihilation of the state governments and the creation upon their ruins of the general consolidated government will be the inevitable consequence. This totally debunks the argument that is given so much out there that nullification leads to anarchy and it'll lead to the end of the United States as we know it. No. The Founding Fathers said that if we allow the federal government to continue to violate the Constitution, that's what's going to lead to the destruction of the Constitution. That's what's going to lead to the destruction of our state governments. That's what's going to, and we're seeing that. We talked about it in the last hour about the national ID program. Because the states are refusing to do their role of enforcement of the Constitution, we are losing the Constitution. We are losing our states. We are becoming mere sub-factions of a central government. Further on in the Kentucky resolutions, Thomas Jefferson said that the several states who formed the Constitution, being sovereign and independent, right? We were 13 independent countries that decided to come together for the common defense and giving the general government certain powers. Okay, so those several sovereign states have the unquestionable right to judge of the Constitution's infraction, and that a nullification by those sovereignties of all authorized acts done under color of that instrument is the rightful remedy. Okay, so the guys that wrote the Declaration, the guys that wrote the Constitution, they're saying that no, the Supreme Court is not the final arbiter. In fact, the Constitution itself gives the power to Congress to limit the jurisdiction of the courts. When they pass a law, they can say, we pass this law and the courts are not allowed to rule on this. That's in the Constitution. And so who's the final arbiter? If the Congress can limit the jurisdiction of the courts, the final arbiter is the creator, the states. The state legislators have a job to judge the constitutionality of an act of Congress or of the president or of the courts. And that if they find that that action be unconstitutional, Thomas Jefferson says that nullification is the rightful remedy. He also said in a letter to Abigail Adams in 1804, quote, so this is after the formation of the Constitution, right? Quote, the opinion which gives to the judges the right to decide what laws are constitutional and what are not only for themselves in their own sphere of action, but for the legislature and executive also in their spheres, would make the judiciary a despotic branch. This idea that we're seeing today that's being promoted by so-called constitutional scholars that the Supreme Court, has the final say, the Founding Fathers said, no, that makes them a despotic branch. That's why that the Founding Fathers in the Constitution gives each branch of power, each branch of government, that the longer they serve, the less power they have, right? Congress has the most power, so they're only in there for 2 years. And then the Senate and the president has the next longest term of 4 years, and so he's got less power. He's only allowed to either sign the law or to veto a law and then implement the law that's passed. That's it. And then the courts, because they're there forever, at least that's what they turn for good behavior, and nobody's deciding what good behavior is, they have the least amount of power. And the Founding Fathers knew that. And that's why they didn't give the Supreme Court the ultimate authority of deciding these issues. You have a comment, a question on these things, give us a call. 801-254-1640 is the number. 801-254-1640. Let's go to the phone lines. Line 5, you're on K-Talk with Ben McClintock from defendingutah.org.
Ben, love the show. You're doing a great job. Hey, this is Jay.
Hey, Jay.
Just wanted to encourage anybody who hasn't joined Defending Utah to do so. What a treasure trove. I've just been a member with Defending Utah just maybe a month or so. But the meetings and things, that the trainings and things, just awesome. I've learned a ton, and I know there's a lot of regular callers on K-Talk that I hear on a lot of shows that would just thrive having the Defending Utah organization and training and stuff to help them. Rob is a prime example. He'd be awesome in Defending Utah if he's not a member already. But there's plenty of guys out there that are regular. So you guys know who you are. I would encourage you to join and help this organization. But talking about nullification and stuff, and I'm doing my little bit on my end.
Awesome.
Is I just received in the mail this last week, and I think you know this story because I think I may have CC'd you in an email. So I got my American Community Survey from the census in the mail, and this thing is just that big information mining instrument that's really not constitutional. I mean, our requirement by the Constitution is to tell the document how many people live under our roof to determine our representation in Congress, and that's it. They don't need to know if I have a VHS Betamax DVD player or a Blu-ray
or which route you take to work.
Yeah, exactly. They don't need to know any of that information. And I serve as an elected official on a fire board, and one of the pieces of propaganda that comes in the document that says this information helps communities in determining where to build schools and fire departments and stuff. And we stood up a new fire department a couple of years ago in our fire district, and we didn't use any of this kind of information. We went by our dispatch times and call times to where we needed to place a thing. We didn't use, stuff from the American Community Survey. So it's a lie when they say that it's used for building fire departments and stuff. Maybe some cities use it, but in our case, we didn't use any of this. And
there's plenty of local data for your local community to decide that information on. They don't need a national census to be able to decide that. Yeah,
exactly. And so, I've already got a reminder letter in the mail to send my stuff out because I haven't gone online and done it. So I'm waiting for the knock at the door. 10 years ago, I did this same thing, and I actually called the Rob Bishop's office and said, "Hey, I'm not going to fill this out. In the Constitution, it says I only got to tell how many people are under my house, under my roof, basically, and I'm not going to do it." And they said, "Well, if anybody you get any static, you can refer them to us, and we'll help you." And I never heard anything back. I got pestered with a bunch of reminders, and then finally it went away. But that's my own form of nullification
Good.
in trying to right an overreach of government. But anyhow,
that's awesome.
Did a great job.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Bye. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Especially with the census, this is kind of like getting your feet wet in the nullification. Can be scary. You're nullifying the law, and they always threaten you. If you don't fill this out, you can be penalized by the law, and up to so and so years of jail time, etc. And in the case of the census, I've personally never heard of anybody going to jail because they failed to fill out every portion of the census form. And so that's a good way to get your feet wet in nullification. So just getting more into who decides. Sometimes people will say, well, yeah, the founding fathers said that, but the Civil War, the war between the states, decided that. Well, even Abraham Lincoln, who people say is one of the people that this war led us out of the idea of nullification and give us a strong central government. Even Abraham Lincoln said that the courts were not the final arbiters of what's constitutional. He said, quote, "But if the policy of the government upon a vital question affecting the whole people is to be irrevocably fixed by the decisions of the Supreme Court, the moment they are made, the people will have ceased to be their own masters." Okay, so if the question is of the people is to be fixed, if the decision is going to be fixed on the Supreme Court, we've ceased to become our own masters. Even Abraham Lincoln, as late as that, we've recognized this idea that the courts are not the final arbiter. We've got to realize this, and we go back to the principle. If we understand the principle and the actual context of how the United States was founded, lowercase u or uppercase s, we understand that these were 13 sovereign, independent countries that came together for a common defense. They didn't come together to erase themselves. To his death, Thomas Jefferson said he is a Virginian, not an American. He was a Virginian. We need to start thinking of ourselves in that manner. We are Utahns. And we are the arbiters of what's constitutional. And that is, and nullifying is the rightful remedy according to the founding fathers. And this is not just, some people say, that was Thomas Jefferson. It was so extreme, or, that was just so there were more than just Kentucky involved in this nullification movement. You had the General Assembly of Connecticut, who said the very same thing. You have, in 1832, the Supreme Court ruled against a law in Georgia. The Supreme Court ruled against them. Georgia passed a law that says that anyone that comes to Georgia to enforce the court ruling will be hung. The state of Utah could say anybody in the state anybody that comes to enforce Roe v. Wade will be thrown in jail or the death penalty or whatever the state legislature decided to do. The fact that the state legislature refuses to do these things shows you where they're at. And if you're against nullification, let me look at the things that means you're against, right? So you have the case where Alexander Donovan was commanded to kill Joseph Smith. But because he knew it was an illegal order, he says, "It is cold-blooded murder, and I will not obey your order. And if you execute these men, I will hold you responsible." That means that you're against the Underground Railroad and freeing the slaves if you think that nullification is a bad idea. John Taylor in Utah here, when the federal government was violating the Constitution, his response, "I defy the United States." We have the sheriff's movement to nullify illegal federal action. You have, just like we talked about in the earlier hour, states, in this last decade have nullified the national ID card. You have states right now nullifying illegal pretend legislation against marijuana. And so what we need to do, again, is follow that proper diagnosis and follow the Constitution to be able to understand how we can actually start to restore liberty, actually start to enforce the Constitution, because the Constitution's not the problem. We don't need more laws. We don't need more amendments saying we really mean it this time. We need an informed and active citizenry that will become involved in the solution. And just like Jay, I really appreciate Jay's call and becoming and encouraging you to become a member of Defending Utah. We've got a ton of benefits in addition to what you are supporting. You're supporting independent journalism. You're supporting an organization that can see, that understands who the enemy is, that understands who the guys that are trying to work to destroy our liberty so that we can be more effective in our efforts to preserve liberty. So please go to defendingutah.org, go to the membership tab and become a member today, or go to the store tab and pick up some of these booklets to help yourself become more informed and understand these issues of nullification, of natural law. This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, HigherCallingFirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, BlackLotusWebDev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and Kangen Water at championsneverquit.biz.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU Smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.